Dear world, I have been told by many that the releasing of this truth may pose certain challenges in my life, for there are many institutions that this truth will be viewed as disruptive to their system of profit and gains. I want to live a happy and peaceful life, and I pray for longevity, not just for me, but for our entire species. Know that I would never harm myself, nor anyone else for that matter. Nevertheless, if my life has to face certain challenges so that this planet can be saved, please do not let these trials that I may have to face be in vain, and pray for me as I am praying for you.
There's no death, it's just a transition. I would remind every human being that they are not just made in God's image. When they look in the mirror, they should see the Creator. And when the Creator looks in the mirror, they should see them. And as long as they recognize that divinity within self, they'll be fine. They can move forward without any problems. Once you recognize that there is no such thing as death, that life eternal cannot die. Even the polyester that probably makes up this material, it's still carbon. It's still vibrating at the key of E. It's still breathing in and breathing out. That's the vibration. That's that Browning effect, is the vibration from it polarizing from positive to negative. Positive polarization happens when you breathe in. That's a masculine thing. It's an electric charging. The feminine is the discharging, expanding. It expands out. So the breathing in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. All these things are alive. And once you recognize that, this life becomes fun because you can do anything, because it's not forever, but life is forever. You can't tell me that this is your first lifetime. Totally. We've been here from the very beginning because we're made from the very source of the Creator and the universe as a whole. God is not outside the universe in some strange place. The universe, all of us make up God. Walter Russell said something really brilliant. He said, nature is a very jealous God. She only speaks to you when you are alone, and she whispers. She whispers. You have to be silent and shut off the noise.
Everything that you think you know about what you know will be called into question. What I'm about to reveal is intended for the betterment of all living, breathing, and conscious beings in this world and the worlds to come. All creation is alive. All creation shares a collective consciousness with all other things. While many within our species ignore the desperate cries of their own conscience, they also ignore the suffering of the other beings that we share our existence with. All things are equal. All things stem from the same source, the Creator of all things. All created things are also due the same inalienable rights and considerations that the human family enjoys. We, as members of this privileged universal family, have a responsibility to everything within creation. We must show it in all of our actions as a sign of appreciation for being blessed with this gift of existence. We should show that we are not only willing, but are also happy to cooperate with all things, and are not here to compete with, but to cooperate with nature. All creation understands innately the need for give and take in this shared universe. Let's go about it responsibly, please. You want to know a secret. If you know one thing about one thing, then you know one thing about all things. Find the common factor, and you either multiply by it or divide by it. I understand that many truths are hard to swallow. Like in the movie A Few Good Men, when Jack Nicholson tells Tom Cruise's character, "You can't handle the truth." There are many consequences that come as a result of an unbridled tongue, and the truth can be quite burdensome to hear and difficult to accept at times. Nevertheless, from truth, we grow, even though growing pains may be a necessary accompaniment. Truth is necessary for transparency. It is a vital component for understanding life itself, especially since the future of our entire species completely depends upon it. I have spent much of this lifetime gathering countless bits of information, pieces of answers, and tiny tidbits of regurgitated thought from around the universe. I had no prejudice regarding the source of that information whatsoever. I was only in search of absolute truth. I have read and have been read by some of the most notable people on the planet. Still, I consider myself to be no greater than the simplest single-cell organism and no less than a beloved child of God. I am an Academy Award-nominated actor, a self-taught musician, sculptor, artisan, singer, songwriter, philosopher, poet, alchemist, a student of mathematics, and an avid chess player. I do not boast of memberships in the clubs of the elite, yet I do belong to one of the most influential families that have ever walked upon the face of this planet, the human family. I would like to take a few moments to give thanks to all the pioneers of free thinking that have forged the way for truth seekers, who had an uncompromising devotion to a higher standard in the pursuit of pure and unadulterated truth, wisdom, understanding, discernment, insight, and reasoning, along with a deep appreciation for the eternal beauty and the sanctity of life that exists in all things. Many of them were severely ridiculed and brutally persecuted because their vision exceeded the myopic view of their near-blind contemporaries. Nevertheless, they forged ahead, facing the full wrath of the storm, while we, the children of light, who see only because of their glorious illumination and understand only because of their true genius. We are the beneficiaries of their long suffering. We are the heirs of their love, their heart-motivated and self-sacrificing devotion to the highest standards of truth, love, and consciousness. I acknowledge and recognize the achievements of Walter Russell, John Keeley, and Nikola Tesla, men beyond the cusp of genius.
Walter Russell considered this idea of matter having an accountability to it and what would proceed and what would be the end result of it. And I took Walter's ideas, and he said something a long time ago. He said that in order for something to exist, it has to have four poles. It has to be able to expand outside and contract in the center. Now, how do you do that? You can't do it with three. You need to have four equal and opposite poles. Let's take four equal and opposite sides to it and see what would it make. Well, the end result of this thing right here was a thing called the all shape, which what happened to be a combination of a square, a triangle, and a circle combined. If Walter Russell said all energy in the universe is expressed in motion, and all motion is expressed in vortices, and all vortices are expressed in waves, and all waves are curved, then do these exist? Are there any straight lines? Our mistake has been these straight lines. This is what 1 times 1 equaling 1 comes to. And for 6,000 years, mankind has been locked behind these little things right here, these platonic solids that do very little more than build up and take up space. But because these things do not contract, and because they do not expand, what do? They don't exist. Because anything that exists in this universe has to do one of two things. It has to do both things. It has to both expand and it has to both contract. The geometry that Walter spoke about by something having four equal and opposite poles, that geometry is alive. When you stand in front of it, beyond seeing a million different pictures and energies, when you stand in front of it, you feel your body gets absorbed into it. You feel it recognizing you that as you recognize it. And that's the truth about sacred geometry. Sacred geometry touches you from here. This is what Walter was speaking about when he was like, everything has four equal and opposite sides. And I just wanted to put all these things together and see how they play. But I also wanted to figure out something else. Remember the flower of life? You see the flower of life keep generating itself throughout this process. And there's so many people in here that understands, the cube nature of this wave field and how that bends the light and how light expands into a cube and contracts into a cube again. And we rarely experience the expansion of light into a cube or the contraction of light into a cube until we feel it in here. When life happens, when we have a child, and you feel the four corners come together. This was Walter's description of the film. I never saw a picture of him dealing with the flower of life. This is the closest to the flower of life I've ever seen. So he understood the mechanics of it. And he understood the math that it described universal mathematics and function. Every one of those little pieces, any one of these, whether it was this, whether it was this, whether it was all of this, whether it was all of this, I've been doing this for 25 years in a vacuum by myself. All this time, we've known that there was something vibrating in between these magnetic strings. There was something there, but we couldn't see what they were. And they always drew them out as circles, all these, anytime the scientific community would draw a picture of something, it would be a circle. It would be a proton in a circle. An electron was another circle. And all these circles bumping into each other and not looking at the only things that would be circular would be things working within the magnetic field, would be in the expansive thing. Anything, all things expand as a sphere. You drop a pebble into a pond, what do you see? A perfect sphere all the way out to the edge. You get to the edge of the shore, what happens? Now these things trying to return back in, but they're met with expanding waves again. And they're trying to make it through those expanding waves, and guess what? The very first geometric form takes place. Electrical energy always contracts in geometric form. Expanding energy always takes a sphere. Everything expands in sixths and contracts in what? Fifths. The circle of fifths, everything contracts in fifths, and then a greater contraction happens in fourths. That's the cube, and there's no place left to go. But this right here, that right there, opens the doorway for so much. Play with it. Take four sides of something, build these individual things, play with the universal constructs. No longer just look at the words or look at and think about it. Play, build with it. Draw out the flower of life. Cut the pieces out. Take you a soldering tool. Bend them together and get to know dark matter functions. Bring them to light. Because it's all based on that. It's just a child. Stay the child, be curious, and make something to impress everybody. And you will change the world. Because nobody in this place now, for 6,000 years, they've been trying to break down that flower of life. And these are second and third generations. I've got it down to about the sixth generation of these things occurring. And there's more and more of nesting. And I think we are 1 million years away from seeing anything that's familiar once these things go into a simulation. But these are true. They're not lies. They're not pieces of art that I put together. These are universal functions. I want you to find these pieces yourself. I want you to build these pieces. Go cut the flower of life apart. Take your soldering tool and start building it until you get these pieces out of here, and you will understand what I'm talking about and start putting the universe together. And never again will anybody be able to take the truth away from you. Because this is truth, and it balances itself.
The construction of the universe in accordance with Euclid's axioms, theorems, and postulates is not in accordance with the laws of motion. One of the axioms used by Euclid in proof of other axioms and postulates reads, "Figures may be freely moved in space without change in shape or size." If this is true, the space between the heavenly bodies is a void, a vacuum. If this is true, the theory of a non-resistant, pressureless, uniform ether of space is tenable. If this is true, the heavenly bodies must hold themselves in their relative orbits by their mutual attraction and the impetus of their motion. If, on the contrary, it can be clearly shown that figures cannot be freely moved in space without change of shape or size, then a fundamental axiomatic Euclidean principle is not true. It is herein contended that figures cannot move 1 inch in space without change in shape and size, for this entire universe of motion is one of varying but repetitive pressures. and Euclidean indefinite straight line reaching out to infinity is not possible in this universe of varying pressures. The varying pressures of space are curved. They represent expressions of the energy of motion. All energy of motion expresses itself in waves. All waves are opposed spirals and limited in dimensions. All opposed spiral waves accumulate mass and simultaneously redistribute that accumulation. All accumulating mass is aiming toward gyroscopic perfection of motion and toward perfection of cubic crystallization. All diffusing mass is aiming away from gyroscopic stability and away from the simple cubic crystallization toward amorphous complexity of crystallization. All direction is the direction of opposing pressures. The direction of all opposing pressures is spiral. All direction is therefore curved. All curves are spiral. All orbits are spiral. They are all conic sections. A parabolic or hyperbolic orbit is impossible in this universe of pressures. Any anti-clockwise orbit which cuts the base of its cone of measured energy is regenerated in the opposed cone of the wave, and its orbit becomes a clockwise orbit of another system. An object freely moving in space must move in a curved spiral line, whether that object be a planet, a corpuscle, or a ray of light, or any other expression of energy. Further, any expression of energy in this universe must end where it began. It must be curved. Furthermore, the curve is never a circle. It is a spiral, and its convolutions from its beginning to its ending run the whole gamut of effects of motion in speed, temperature, planes, and pressures. Furthermore, no curved spiral of motion ending where it began traverses the universe in its journey. The conclusion of Einstein that the universe must be spherical because all direction is curved is based on the assumption that the direction of motion is curved, circular, or elliptical, and traverses the whole universe in its passage. No mass or body or other expression of motion in any state can pass the boundary plane of its own wave of energy. Every effort of energy sets its own dimensions. Its boundaries are limited by that effort. Energy reproduces itself and thus transfers its expression throughout the universe from wave to wave, but there are dividing walls where motion cease and begin again, and where all mass disappears to reform again. Mass is energy. Energy accumulates as mass and is redistributed in accordance with the increasing and decreasing pressures which it is able to generate. A corpuscle is a mass just as a planet is a mass. An atom is a mass just as a solar system is a mass. The pressures which an atom of hydrogen can develop varies vastly from that which an atom of radium can develop. They compare with one another as a sewing machine motor compares with a high voltage power plant. All masses, whether they are light units, planets, or suns, are compressions and expansion pumps which hold themselves together for a time in greater or less proximity according to the various ratios of their respective compression and expansion powers in order to simulate the forms being thought out as idea by the image-making facility of the one universal mind. It is a fundamental principle of physics that the slightest change in pressure of any substance changes its value. A change of temperature is one indicator of a change of pressure. Every inch of the universe varies in temperature. Every inch must therefore vary in pressure. Every atom varies in pressure from its exterior to its nucleus. If its temperature is changed, its volume also changes. Also, every kind of atom varies from every other kind in volume, temperature, and all other dimensions. Every kind of atom is in a different plane, and each plane is the pressure wall of the varying pressure components or compartments, which divides the universe of motion into pressure zone. Space is made up of atoms of these varying pressures. If an object cannot freely move at the Earth's surface without expanding or contracting to adjust itself to the varying pressures, how can it do so in space? The answer comes back from tradition. But space is a void. Is it?